Mm.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a little bit earlier Beard of Blather, number 212, incidentally, doubling down on crazy. God, yeah. Woo, woo, woo. This is, well, we're going to get into that. And this is my first one back stateside, so forgive me if I'm still a little spacey. But, Thomas, what can I say? I want to get the hell out and go back to the mountains of Italy. I didn't have to put up with Biden on TV all the time. There were other idiots, but I didn't give a shit because it was their problem, not mine. Anyway, we're gonna get to that. We're doing this as it's become a habit on our channel in Odyssey, the YouBoob channel, alas not whole, and three timelines in Twitter. Uh, Thomas's over there, mine, and Quadverum's. And I still don't understand how these things works, but each channel has its own followers, and they do not cross pollinate. Weird, isn't it? Um. Anyway, I see there are a bunch of people that have arrived. The reminder: if you like these, press like wherever the hell you are, and let us know that you love us. There are always a couple of assholes who press don't like even before we start. So if you do like it, like it. If you don't, hey, it helps anyway. Just don't be silent. Number two, if you want to buy us a cup of coffee and help us defray the costs of what we do, by all means, your contributions are both necessary and welcome. And you can do that by pressing down there in support, if you happen to be in Odyssey, um, and support the channel. Or over there is a dollar sign, and you can use it for a super chat where you send us a coffee together with a comment. And there is a join button in there to join as a member of the channel. We still need a few more members. We're blessedly slowly growing there, and a channel membership will allow us to know what's coming and what we can spend or not, and how to budget our next month. So that said, oh yes, if you are in YouBoob, don't. YouBoob keeps 50% of everything you put in there. So don't. By all means, don't. They'll use that money to censor us and other people too. Screw them. Instead, try this one. Let me see if I can see it here. Oh, yeah. Quadverum.com/support us. That way, no, the money comes straight to us minus whatever merchant fee they charge for credit cards. Quadverum.com support us, and that'll help this channel and SQV. And now that I have done with my shameless request for coffee, how are you doing, Thomas?
Going good. You and I were talking last night, and we said we'd dedicate basically this show to the stateside drama. But before we get into that, as I hope everybody knows, there was a big terrorist attack in Russia. The death toll is, I think, over 120 now, and it's
133 is the last I said.
yeah.
They,
So
they keep finding people in the rubble.
Well, see, there were 6,000 people there, and the survivors said that one of the four terrorists had a flamethrower, and he set the ceiling on fire. So the thing burnt from the top down. It was. I mean, okay, well, okay, not to get lost in the weeds of everything, but initially the Russians said it had to be the Ukrainians. I knew it wasn't the Ukrainians. The US government said it wasn't the Ukrainians. And now I'm quite pleasantly surprised to hear that the Russian FSB has now said it wasn't the Ukrainians. Okay, Saul, you said that three of the men were Tajiks.
Yep.
And do you know what the fourth guy was?
I think he was from essentially a Chechen.
Yeah.
You know, Chechnya divided in two, Ingushetia and Chechnya. And
Right.
I think he was an Ingush, but I'm not sure. I'm
Right.
sure about the three Tajiks.
In case people aren't really familiar with all of that area, Tajiks are Muslims. The Ingush were basically part of Chechnya. It's now Ingushetia. They're currently at war with the Russians. They've launched an armed uprising.
Yep.
Because the Ingush, if you see the Ingush resistance arm, their flag is suspiciously similar to the flag of Al Qaeda, and the Islamic State. There is an active Islamic State branch operating in the Russian Federation, and the U.S., for what it's worth, says that these were terrorists, these were Islamic jihadist terrorists.
Yep.
Specifically the Islamic State. Although I don't know if we've specifically,
Well,
admitted that it was
the Islamic State, through their websites, has been telling everybody and their mother, it was us, we did it. And just to make sure people got the message, they had videotape of the perpetrators before the attack.
Yeah.
And in one of the videos, they're actually wearing the clothes they wore when they were arrested.
Right. And okay, I saw one interrogation, and the guy said he did it because he needed the money. It was the equivalent of $5,400 US. And I thought, Jesus, this guy sold his soul for so little. But it makes sense if he's a jihadist on top of everything else. And clearly these men intended to survive. They tried to get away.
Yep.
So I am surprised that the Russians aren't using this as a pretext to really ramp up the pressure on Ukraine, but maybe they understood that they don't have the means to ramp up the pressure. I mean,
Maybe.
what more can they do?
They launched the big Tupolevs, the long range bombers.
Yes.
I don't know where they're going, if they're going any place or it's just flexing. But first they claimed it was the Ukrainians. Then they claimed that, well, it wasn't the Ukrainians, but the Ukrainians had an escape route ready for these guys, so they could cross the border into Ukraine, forgetting perhaps that the entire border between Ukraine and Russia is occupied by Russia.
Yeah.
And I wonder how the Ukrainians can make a corridor around Donetsk for these people to come in. It's ridiculous on its face. And now the FSB is finally saying, yeah, well, it appears it was the ISIS after all. The U.S. government actually warned not just Russia, but the entire world.
Yeah.
They warned American citizens to avoid large crowds in Russia because there was talk of an imminent attack on a large crowd. But of course, they didn't know the day and they didn't know where. As these things go, you know that you hear rumblings, but no precision.
Yeah,
and they let the Russians know, and now you have imbeciles of every stripe claiming that obviously the U.S. Is responsible and they prepared this, and that's why they knew in advance.
well, but I mean, this is it's like everything else now. Um, Sonny and Cher had a song called "The Beat Goes On," and
Yeah.
that's what my brother always starts to sing whenever he hears something that is just like this tired trope, just repeated over and over
Yeah.
again. He just starts singing, and the beat goes on, and I mean, this none of these people matter.
No. No. By the way, just in case you haven't heard, it was the Mossad, just like 9/11,
Yeah, if
because the Mossad is behind ISIS.
yeah, of course, and whatever. I mean, it's just not. Well, okay, the Libertarian Party in Los Angeles is pushing to arm illegal aliens. It says that the illegal aliens have every right to defend themselves, so they want weapons distributed to illegal aliens. And like, I mean, this can sort of segue us back into what we were going to talk about, which
Yeah.
is the crazy.
Into Rand Paul, and Iran, of course, has every right as a sovereign nation to develop its own nuclear weapons. Who are
Right.
we to tell them otherwise?
And see, okay, I heard an interview with the Russian ambassador to Paris, and I mean, he was coming off as a lunatic. He
Yes.
said that it's the West. It's the West that if World War III happens, it's the West that's responsible. And he said that the West needs to understand that Ukraine will never, ever, ever be returned to its pre-2014 borders, and that this is now an existential war for Russia. And like, this is such madness. This would, what I would say to the guy. I mean, there was a French reporter, so he just could, and I would just say, look, if the United States suddenly seized Kamchatka and said, this is now part of the United States, and you need to understand it's never going to be returned, and the onus is on you if you try and take it back. Russia wouldn't put up with that. I mean, no country in the world would. And I would say that the problem with Russian politicians, Russian government officials, is that you people never listen. And you act as though Russia is, of all the countries in the world, entitled to do whatever it wants, and any response to that is entirely the fault of the rest of the world. I mean, anybody would know that Russia gradually, I mean, NATO is pushing its way eastward. Russia is pushing its way westward. And
Yes. And by the way, NATO is not pushing anything. The recent push east of NATO is courtesy of Russia.
well,
It
this is
was it was Putin who pushed Finland, Sweden, and of course the Balkan states into NATO's arms.
this is the thing that the Russians preemptively threatened Finland and Sweden with destruction. Finland and Sweden had never said a word about joining NATO
No
until
intention.
an hours after the Russians went into Ukraine. They said, "Oh, and by the way, to Finland and Sweden, if you dare join NATO, we're gonna raise you to the ground." So
Yep.
the Russians behave as if nobody in the world, as if there are no logical consequences to their actions, and that
Yes.
any logical consequence, which is the need for survival on the part of the West, any logical consequence of Russian actions, they they immediately act. They act as if this is the most outrageously illegitimate response they've ever seen.
And I'll tell you another one as to NATO's reticence. Ukraine has been wanting to join NATO since the 90s, and it has been systematically and consistently rebuffed. Even now, they're not being accepted fully into NATO because part of their territory is occupied, right? What was the status of Germany when it joined NATO?
It was split into two entirely different countries. Half of it was occupied.
And one was actually occupied by Russia.
Of course.
So
and Berlin was occupied by, half of Berlin was occupied by Russia.
How can these fuckers come and tell me now that the German solution cannot be applied to Ukraine? The problem with NATO is that it seeks not expansion.
Exactly. I mean, okay, just one final point about the Russo-Ukraine war. The Ukrainians, well, okay, let's leave Ukraine out of it because people are irrational. They have an irrational hatred of Ukraine. Other sources, such as the British and now the French and the Poles, have pointed out that Biden and Scholz of Germany stymieing aid for Ukraine, what that has led to is it's brought us much closer to the possibility of a massive shooting.
Of a generalized conflict, yes.
We now have the French who are saying we are going to send combat troops into Ukraine, and those combat troops may already be there. We don't know. Yeah. They're talking about, starting out in Odessa. We have the Poles saying we're going to do the same. We have at least one Balkan state. I think Estonia is saying the same thing. And if things continue the way they're going, then yes, we will see a Western European shooting war. Not NATO, because NATO is a defensive organization, but
individual countries will.
A combined army of NATO members taking on Russia, and
the UK is in the list too. They have a mutual defense agreement with Ukraine now.
Well, there are Middle Eastern countries. Saudi Arabia has a mutual defense pact with NATO, with Ukraine. So we could see Middle East, or we could see the Gulf Cooperation Council states going into Russia, going in to fight Russia. So everything that the anti-Ukraine war people want has brought us closer to a shooting war. It's the most apt analogy would be, you've had an injury, you've had a bandage on, and there went Saul. Saul, is there a Saul in the house? In case people are wondering why my lighting has changed, there he is. My floor lamp died, and the little clicker switch that stuck out, it just fell out. And I looked at it, and the threads were wrapped in black electrical tape. And so I took the shade off of my floor lamp. And my father had tinkered with it. He'd taken it apart, and he couldn't get it back together. So he rigged up some outrageously bizarre contraption that made it impossible to put it back together the way it should be, but also impossible to repair it the way my father did it. So I've thrown away my floor lamp. I haven't gotten a new one. I'm using a different lamp, so that's why the lighting's different. But okay, imagine you have a pretty serious wound on your arm, and it's time to change the bandages. You're in the hospital. Okay, let's say you're a burn patient, and do you want them to like take the bandages off as quickly as possible, or do you want them to spend the next 5 hours going?
Just yank the damn thing and get it over with.
Exactly. I've had a lot of painful medical procedures, and you know, get them over as quickly as possible, because when they're that painful, you don't want to stretch them out for 5 hours.
No,
So,
no. Just do it. And
so and this segues right into the insanity of the left right now, is that this whole notion that we must somehow appease Russia as we're fighting them. The Israelis, we have to somehow appease Hamas.
Yeah.
And appease.
But remember, the Biden administration is the craziest gathering of imbeciles ever assembled under a single roof.
Yeah.
There's nothing in foreign policy that is not destructive to U.S. national security.
Well, everybody.
They have a penchant for antagonizing our friends, enabling our enemies. It was the Biden administration that financed Hamas. By indirectly, but they financed them anyway. After Trump cut off U.S. aid to Palestinian terrorists and applied maximum pressure on Iran, terrorism attacks in the world subsided.
Yeah.
In comes Biden. He restores financing to the Palestinian Authority. They restored up to $350 million a campaign. They restored financing to Iran, not only with the $16 billion that everybody talks about, but the $100 billion that Iran was able to collect with the waiver of sanctions.
Well, also, what everybody needs to understand, the Biden administration is playing tricks on you when they say they're enforcing sanctions. Sanctions, you have the primary sanctions, which are directly against Iran, and then there's secondary sanctions, which are sanctions against the financial institutions that do business with Iran. Yes. We're not sanctioning any of them.
No.
So Iran is business as usual with all its Middle Eastern, European, and wherever Bahamian financial institutions. So
and China, they bypass all of the financial restrictions through Chinese banks.
Exactly, and this is all deliberate. This so Biden can look you in the eye and saying, we've applied the harshest sanctions regime in history to Iran. Yeah, primary sanctions against individuals, against the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, but not sanctions against the secondary sources of finance for the Iranians. And basically the primary sanctions mean nothing in comparison to the secondary sanctions.
Yeah.
So
it's. By the way, I just got a message from Ellie, but that reminded me that tonight was the beginning of Purim. It's about to start for you over there, and I wanted to wish everybody who's watching us a very happy Purim. Purim is probably the only happy religious holiday for Jews. Did you know that?
No, but I'm familiar with the religious holidays and the sort of dark quality of.
Oh God, the most religious holidays are They try to kill us. They persecuted us. They nearly annihilate us. But we leave. Let's eat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
No, that's exactly right. And
Purim is different. Purim is a celebration, and it is the kids' favorite. When I was a kid, in my grandparents' house, there would be the cookies, the hamantaschen, which are delicious little cookies. And in Israel, they celebrate with kind of a carnival for kids.
yeah, and I don't know.
And, and we both disappeared for a second there.
Yep. No,
And
and
who's
okay, what other people have this history of, they tried to kill us again. They tried to kill us again. Um, it's really and okay.
Well, if you really look at it, all peoples.
Well, not to the extent of the Jewish people, and you know what the Israelis are doing to Hamas is pretty much the first time that Jewish people are standing up in a way that is entirely resolute, and they're pulling no punches. And I saw that information that you told me about, where Biden told Blinken, Netanyahu told Blinken, we'd really like you to be with us when we go into Rafah, but if you aren't, so be it. We're going in anyway. And Canada has cut off its military support for the Israelis, but those are Canadians, so I mean they were providing substantial support, but I'm sure most left-wing Canadians are going, thank God, but they don't believe in God, so they're going, yeah, you go Hamas, freedom fighters. But no, I mean everything that the Democrats are doing right now. And there he goes again. I cannot see Saul. Can you hear me, Saul? Can you speak? Nope. Everything that the Democrats are doing right now is harming us, but it's harming the Democrats more than anybody else. And I heard that genius Bill Maher say that there he is. I heard that genius Bill Maher say that Biden just happened to be unlucky when inflation came around, and he happened to be president at the time, because inflation comes in cycles. It's just natural, and Biden just happened to be the president, and food has gone up, maybe 3%, 5%. That's really funny. Every time I go shopping now, I eat a very limited diet out of choice. But I buy, 2 gallons of milk, 5 little containers of bags of small tortillas that are getting smaller every time I buy them. Maybe some kosher pickles, mixed vegetables.
Shrinkflation.
Exactly. Some ground turkey, some peanut butter, because I love peanut butter, and maybe some coffee, and it's $94, and this is a box store. This is it's not a regular supermarket. Their prices are lower than supermarkets, so yeah, it's going up maybe, I don't know. So
but I'm so sick and tired of Biden and his imbecilities.
Exactly.
Shrinkflation is one such imbecility.
Of course.
Whenever the price of products go up, for whatever reason. For instance, one thing they don't tell you, there were several droughts this year that have really affected the harvest of olives in Europe. As a consequence, the price of olive oil has gone through the freaking roof. A liter of good olive oil that was maybe $5 4 years ago, it's 40 to 50 today. So you go to stores, and these nobody told me. I saw it with my own eyes. You go to stores in Italy, in Spain, and they have these wraparound electronic devices on every single bottle of olive oil, just like they do with expensive clothing at department stores. That has to be removed at the cashier, or it sounds alarms all over the place, because suddenly the most stolen article is olive oil.
Sure.
In those circumstances, for people who do not resort to stealing, what suppliers do is offer smaller packages.
Of
So
course.
you may not be able to afford a $50 liter of olive oil, but you can afford uh, $5 for 100 deciliters. And they sell you olive oil in little bottles like perfume.
Yeah. We're living in the airline booze economy, where if I want to buy coffee, it's like I get what looks like a little airliner, instant coffee bottle. It's like enough for a flight
Yeah.
to Australia or something. And no, and okay, someone like Bill Maher. I mean, I encourage Bill Maher to keep talking, because the more he talks, the angrier people get. But when was the last time Bill Maher shopped for his own food?
Never.
Yeah, and he has people who pay his.
Never. It used to be Mommy Dearest, and now it's an assistant.
Yeah, no, he doesn't check. He doesn't go over his bills or anything. And these people on TV, on cable channels or whatever. I mean, they're getting paid. I mean, millions, 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 millions. And okay, I saw a headline today where the Democrats, their new talking point is that people only think prices are going up because they just read the news. It's like, oh, so people don't actually buy their own food. They've gone beyond food. They're living on air now. I mean,
God, they're making choices every day at the supermarket.
but see, this is
And by the way, inflation is of 8%. 5% more expensive today.
say it again.
Yeah. Ever since Biden took office, cumulative inflation means that just about everything you buy today is 20 to 25% more expensive than in January 2021. People are feeling the pinch. It's not the usual 5% we should have expected in 3 years. 20,
Well,
25% people feel it. And
okay,
it's about to get worse.
the way inflation is measured, I mean, they're talking about mean inflation, which means that they average everything out. The stuff I buy, let me tell you, it's doubled in price, and sometimes it's even higher than doubled in
Yes.
price. And think about everything behind everything that's causing prices to rise. It's all a Biden choice. Okay, cutting off
Yes.
our access to our own energy. That's one. Refusing to completely annihilate the Houthis, which has resulted in ships having to go around the Horn of Africa. And now the Houthis say that they're going to start attacking ships that are going around the Horn of Africa. Okay. So what are they supposed to do? Is Europe now supposed to go start out from? I mean, I didn't even know what the hell they're going to do. Go in the other direction? That's not possible. So there's that. There's the outrageous increases in the price of doing business in terms
Yeah.
of government slapping everybody with you know do this or we'll sue you sort of situation.
Oh, the weight of regulation
Exactly.
is right now more than 60% of the cost of doing business for any small company.
Exactly. And then the final thing is this lawfare that they're waging primarily against Donald Trump. But okay, after they basically jury rigged this charge against Trump in New York, and the governor was hit by so many threats from corporations to leave. She said, no, we're only doing this to Trump. No, they're not. Letitia James has already set her sights on other corporations, which you and I
Yeah,
knew.
which, by the way, when they say no, 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 we're only doing this to Trump, it's a confession of a crime.
Yeah,
It is these assholes admitting publicly that they're issuing bills of attainder that are as unconstitutional as it gets.
but see, they do this all the time now. I haven't watched. Okay, apparently the Star Wars franchise. I watched the first and second. I must have watched the third one because I remember those stupid. I remember the ending with all these dwarves in furry costumes playing horrible music and dancing, and then the ghosts of Obi-Wan Kenobi and some old blobby old man playing Darth Vader, and they all appeared and smiled and then disappeared. But there's been a whole series of prequels and sequels and this, that, and the other that I've completely missed. Well, the newest one to come out is been produced by Harvey Weinstein's personal assistant, a woman.
Oh boy.
And in this one, the trailer, okay, the whole point of the Star Wars movies was that you harness the power of something called the Force, and the Jedi were the good. They saw they used the good, and then Darth Vader he was seduced by the dark side of the Force. And in the trailer, which is all women, you have a female Jedi telling someone, "There's no such thing as good and evil. It's only about power." So it's like, there it is in plain language. That's exactly what we've been saying about these people for ages. And here it is. It's now a selling point in a movie. There's no such thing as good or evil. There's only power. And so this is the most outrageous admission of immorality I've ever heard in my life. And these are the heroes of the
Yeah,
movie.
well, it is the promotion of amorality.
Of course.
It's even worse. It's worse than immorality.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and these are the heroes of the movie. These are the people we're supposed to
Yeah.
respect. And this thing is going to tank worse than anything they've put out before, because it's nobody wants to see people. Nobody wants to see a story that the heroes of the movie are nightmares, that they have no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Just about an hour ago, when I returned home to prepare for this, I had a light dinner with my mother, and she was watching something uh, uh, on TV, a movie, and she says to me, "Do people actually think and live like these movies show, I want to cry. I feel so sorry for young people today, literally. And and I told her, Mom, there is a disconnect between what you're watching and what most people live by. Eh, That's one of the problems that we face. But don't feel so bad because most young people eh, do not live like this, do not think like this. They're completely different. Eh, no reason for you to start crying now. She was despondent that things might have gotten so bad. And
Well,
she hasn't seen the acolyte yet.
well, I learned something new today. The youngest person ever admitted into Mensa, which is the Society of People with High
Yep.
IQs, is a 2-year-old.
Top 1%, baby.
Hello? What?
Top 1%.
Right. What was I saying?
The youngest people admitted in Mensa.
Youngest person admitted into Mensa is a little girl who was 2 years old at the time, because she could already read, and she was reading at the level of a kindergarten. She could read books. She lives in Kentucky, and they were interviewing her parents, who are Kentuckians, and they were talking about this is going to open lots of doors for her. They took her to a psychiatrist to ask if there were going to be any problems for her, and he administered an IQ test, which he said normally you don't administer an IQ test to a 2-year-old, but he said, we need to see what her parameters are, and she scored 90. She scored in the top 1%, just like you said. And they live in Kentucky. They're about as conservative and right wing and red state as you could imagine. They value education. They were preparing their daughter to choose her own path in life. They wanted to make sure that she was not going to be alone with such an IQ. So they Mensa has conferences and things like that. A lot of people with massively high IQs find themselves feeling totally alone. The man with the highest measured IQ was a bouncer, and he said that every rise in IQ points of 10 IQ points makes it impossible for those two individuals to converse. And
I'm sorry, makes it impossible.
for those two individuals to converse, to understand each other. So if you're 10 IQ points apart from someone, you just don't understand each other. And
Oh,
I mean,
that's why I can't understand anybody.
well, see, IQ is very strange, which is Mensa's, what people don't understand about Mensa is that there's no real set standard. They take everything into consideration. So
There is a test. There is a test that you do. I was admitted to Mensa in the 90s.
yeah,
And I went to a couple of meetings and was bored shitless.
well, this is the thing. It all
So I
depends.
never returned.
It depends on where you are, and I mean, I don't even know my IQ. I know that my mother had us tested when we were very young, but she never gave us the results. And
The results.
okay, I was left-handed, and at the time, left-handed people, I mean, they tried to force me to be right-handed, so I started wearing my clothes backwards and all this stuff. And I'm pretty sure I tested as low normal or even subnormal, but I don't know what my IQ is. But I would have no interest in going I mean, I've never had a problem conversing with anybody, just because.
Neither do I, and it doesn't even matter what their level of education is.
No.
I'm equally at ease with, I don't know, a stevedore in Sao Paulo, um, or with a PhD in London. Um, I don't think that there is a communication problem. I think that there are people who are too fucking snob.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I've never talked down to anyone in my life, and I've never patronized anyone in my life, and
No.
it's always painful. Like my siblings are all very high IQ, and watching them patronize people was just painful to me. And
Yeah.
you, I reserve my big brain ideas for myself. I don't have to express them to people, and I've done a couple of things just because I was all excited about them. And a lot of most people didn't grasp them. They thought it's weird, and that was enough for me. It's like I don't need. I wasn't going now. I feel so alone. I just reserve all my weirdest ideas for myself, and I write them down, and someday after I'm dead, maybe someone will find them and look at them and publish them and say a misunderstood genius, or maybe they'll laugh and go, "Boy, this guy was so full of shit." It's really hilarious. Um,
You never know. One thing I can tell you though, and this is something that is bugged me for the longest time. Is sometimes I wish I didn't know half what I do.
yeah,
Knowledge comes at a cost.
you bet.
Um, I wish I didn't know shit about anything and could leave like so many people do. You wake up, you have breakfast, you get a roll in the hay with the missus, um, go watch a baseball game, work, doing something that doesn't require a lot of you, and go to sleep and go through life happy and unburdened by knowledge. Um, Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, it is. It is, unless you're facing a crisis and you can't cope. One of the okay, leftists have pushed this addiction to. I mean, okay, when I was in my early 40s, that was when I started taking psychotropic medication on the advice of a cardiologist. I'd never been to a psychiatrist. Um, okay, I'd been to a psychiatrist once, and it was really helpful. I saw him for 18 months, but he never suggested psychotropics, and um, it was different because I went there with a specific purpose, and he was intrigued enough to take me on as a patient. But it was a cardiologist who suggested psychotropics, and eventually I went to a second psychiatrist who's been managing them ever since. But this was only because I was having major problems with issues that needed to be addressed biochemically, and I don't talk about them anymore because the whole concept has been completely debauched. It's been squandered. Every woman under the age of, say, 27, they now have PTSD, anxiety, depression.
They,
It's all.
they have PTSD because they didn't find the brand of eggs they were looking for in the supermarket.
Well, they
Uh,
read a comment on social media, and now they have PTSD.
yeah,
And
yeah.
And,
Oh my God! Yeah, I can't sleep anymore because they said "caca" in Twitter.
well, what these people all do is they go around trying to force everybody to mollycoddle them because they're
Yeah,
disabled by their PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and social anxiety. That's another one I've heard.
yeah,
And nobody has any responsibility to treat me any different than they would treat anybody else. It's up to me to cope with the general world. It's not up to the general world to, like, hold me in their arms and rock me to sleep. And the Democrats have convinced people that, it's that old Disney song, the world owes me a living. And um, it's it's another reason why the ideology of the Democrat Party, of leftism in general, is failing, because it can't. It's going to reach a certain point. Where,
it provides no solution to anything.
exactly.
It is it provides its acolytes with excuses, with cop outs, but not with solutions.
Yeah.
Everything they do turns out to be another syndrome they can fix. So, it shouldn't die. Um, Only true libertarianism, not the laissez-faire bullshit that passes for libertarianism in California or in Kentucky. Uh, Only true libertarianism, only a confidence that by your wiles you will overcome any situation.
Yeah. And
If you find excuses for your failures, the government doesn't let me do anything. Fate, God, little fairies, I don't care. Then why would you bother? Because it's out of your hands.
well, okay. On the other hand, what leftists tell people is that, you know give us a call, give us government a call, and we'll go in and we'll force those people to do everything. You poor victim, to do everything to um, make life as easy as possible for you, because you are you are a lovely, precious victim. And
Yeah,
you end up with these people who are non-functional, but they're aggressively non-functional. That's what gets
yes.
me, is
And
that
proud and damn proud of it.
exactly. Okay, look at all you always hear the same thing. I mean, okay, the princess. Let's see, the Duke of Prince Williams is now the
Oh, Princess of Wales, Catherine.
okay. Princess of Wales just announced that she has some form of serious cancer, and
Yes.
it's abdominal. So,
We don't know if it is colon, ovaries, uterus. We know that she had major surgery, but we don't know what they took out.
we don't know what they took out. We do know that she's having to undergo a course of chemotherapy.
Evil. Yep.
So this is serious cancer, and
Yes.
the only reason she's gone public with it is because she's a princess who needs to inform the people what's going on. In this one particular case, the people do have a right to know up to a certain point, because she represents so much. After Queen Elizabeth II died, we learned how much the British really support their monarchy. And William and Kate are very cognizant of their duties. And, the princess had a duty to inform the public what was happening up to a certain point. She doesn't need to tell us, they took out 6 ounces of my upper intestine. She doesn't need to do that. She needs to maintain dignity in her.
And she didn't.
She did. So, other than that, I mean, the heroic cancer patient, especially the heroic female cancer patient, that was beaten into the ground. All the commercials with the bald women and, just everything. Like you become a hero. You're a hero. You're crippled by this and crippled by that, and you're a hero. And it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're another garden variety cancer patient.
Have you ever seen an ad or a hero worshipping of a guy with prostate cancer?
Of course not. Prostate cancer is never mentioned.
It's never fucking mentioned. I happen to have a lot of old friends, and a couple of them died of prostate cancer. Most don't. Most will die with prostate cancer, but not of it. But every now and then there is a particularly aggressive cancer that metastasizes, and no treatment is enough to stop the fucker. But the thing is, nobody treats these men as heroes.
Of course not. And okay, my father had prostate cancer, and he ended up getting a radical prostatectomy. And let me tell you, the side effects are brutal. And nobody called him a hero. They didn't even want to hear about it.
No. So I'm tired of the victim of the culture of victimization.
No.
I've had it with it. I can't stand it anymore. I loved the Princess of Wales speech.
Yeah.
Not for a split second does she play the victim.
Well, do you remember the lawyer Gloria Allred, who would always find...
Oh, how could I forget that awful wench?
Some woman, and it was totally scripted.
Yes.
The person would come out, she'd read a statement, then she'd cry, and she'd cuddle. Gloria would cuddle her and then wipe her nose for her every single time. It was unbelievable. In the last Trump, before Trump became president, they started this parade of women who are accusing Trump of this, that, and the other.
Yes.
And each one was a bigger freak than the last. So they said, and they found this woman who was like a masseuse. And she came out and she was wearing like this skin tight red. You've probably seen these dresses before that women wear. It's long sleeve. It has a low cut neckline and it's a mini skirt. And it's all one piece. And so she came out, and when she sat down, she made it a point to smooth the non-existent loose material on her butt. So she stuck out her butt and just stroked her bottom before she sat down. And then she cried, and then Gloria dabbed her nose for her. And there's like this picture. She's going, the so-called victim. She's just like a baby. She's going, and Gloria's going beep 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 beep, and everyone was laughing by that point. And
yeah. It was ridiculous, but Gloria Allred made a profession of victimization.
Exactly.
It was ridiculous. It had never anything to do with the law or the facts.
No. Here's the thing about Gloria Allred.
It was always a 19th century pink romance shit.
Here's the thing about Gloria Allred that people might not know. Gloria Allred says that she's the victim of a violent rape. 20 years ago, these guys on KFI AM 640 radio, they wanted to test dick growth drugs, and they had a man who was going to volunteer to take this drug, and they needed a judge to measure his dick before and after. and they chose Gloria Allred, who
She
willingly did it.
volunteered. She
She volunteered.
Yes.
So
How
they made,
many rape victims do you know that would volunteer for a schlong measurement competition?
and the man had to be erect. That's real. That actually happened. So
But I don't know. The woman is bad news. Sandy's getting steamed. Thank you, Sandy. No matter how much you know, there's always someone who knows more, or at least knows different things.
of
The term
course,
genius is subjective, of course. And
yeah,
by the way, I keep telling people when they ask me questions, I learn more than they do.
yeah.
I learn from everybody. I stop to talk to everybody when I'm out and about, and you never know where the next pearl of wisdom is going to come to you from a taxi driver, from a waiter, from the cleaning woman. You never know where you're going to learn the next where the next epiphany is going to come from.
My
Everybody knows something that you don't.
my brother Tim, who lives in Vegas, for some reason he's got a mechanical aptitude, and he knows about all machinery, from cars to motorcycles to gas stoves to lamps to mixers. He just knows these things. He enjoys. He bought an original technical manual for the airliner, the Convair 880. This thing is this thick.
Yeah.
That's his joy reading. He reads that for fun.
Yeah. He's a pretty weird person, I know.
Well,
It's a good thing your brother Tim is a nice person, because this kind of weirdness would set people off otherwise.
see, okay, I had the sink here, the faucet. My father put this his own faucet on it, and it was always too long. And finally, it started dripping endlessly. And my brother was in. We got a new faucet, and that one started dripping. And so I called my brother and I said, can you talk me through? He talked me through taking apart one of the faucets and tightening this part that, I couldn't even tell you. And so over the phone, it was like someone directing physical
I fix all of them. I'm very much like your brother in that respect. I love fixing stuff. I cannot throw anything away. I have to fix it. It's a compulsive thing. But why don't you buy a new one? It's only $10. I don't give a shit. I don't care if it costs me $50 to fix what I can buy new for 10. I need to fix it to give it new life.
Well, okay, that's one of the reasons my brother half jokingly says that machinery has I think it's called a ka, a sort of soul, and
soul, yes.
He likes old stuff because he believes, it has soul, and we have a kitchen tools, mixers, and things like that date from the 1950s. That's how good those things were. And I have an old blender.
Remember the old toasters with 2 doors?
Yeah.
I had 3 of them.
Well,
I still have at home in Virginia valve radios, vacuum tube radios, and I fix them, and I'm still using them, and the quality of the sound is great, by the way. But how can I throw it away?
I don't know. It's and all of this. This is the thing that Democrats and Republicans of different areas, they share all these common values. And what is in the end sinking leftism is that they've taken hold of the viewpoint that the other side is illegitimate in every way. And the other side is composed, the vast majority of the other side are just people. And I saw a fascinating conversation between a conservative black podcast host and some OnlyFans models. And it was hyped up, but he was telling them that they were basically prostitutes. And they were very upset and offended. And one of them said, "That's an archaic term." And he's like, "Okay." She said, "What? The archaic term for you is Negro. Would you like it if I called you a Negro?" And he said, "I am a Negro. That's how you classify black people. They're known as Negroes. You have Caucasians, you have Negroids." And then they were like, "Well, what about a dumb Negro?" And he said, "Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Coming from OnlyFans models? I mean, you know,
You can say anything you want. I don't give a shit anyway.
well, that's his whole point, is that you can call me anything." And they were like, "Well, what about the N word with a hard R?" And he's like, "Well, fine, I'll say you're right. I am. I don't care. I don't care." And it was really fascinating because these women were like walking, talking tape recorders, spooling out every sort of leftist female empowerment trope you could imagine. And the two of them I couldn't tell their age, but they had the surgically enhanced facial features that sort of make women have these generic faces now. And you get the nose job, then you get
Yep.
the cheeks plumped, and then you get the lips plumped, and um, you end up looking somehow more coarse than refined.
Yep.
And I don't know. It was just really funny because, okay, the Democrats are in grave danger because Trump is making massive inroads into the black voting bloc and the Hispanic voters, and between now and the election, things are only going to get worse.
Well, the thing is this: is Trump making inroads, or is Biden pissing them off?
Yeah, that's it. That's. I mean,
Because I think it's more a case of not that the result isn't the same anyway, but I think Biden is determined to piss off every constituency in this country.
he is because he's in.
The level of crazy is so off-putting.
Yeah, yeah. It's he is. I mean, as you said, every single person in his administration is like breathtakingly incompetent. They have no idea what they're doing. And
No,
I know there's people on the right who say, "Oh, it's all part of this carefully thought out plan."
that
No, it
bullshit.
isn't. It isn't.
They're just stupid. And not only in foreign policy. I mean, foreign policy. If there was an Olympic gold medal for foreign policy stupidity, everybody involved in foreign policy in the Biden administration ought to get it
Yeah.
and wear it proudly, man, because they deserve it. They fucked up everything
Yeah.
from the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan for no other reason that Biden got up with a stick up his ass that morning and ordered is catastrophic withdrawal in no time when there was no need for that. On the contrary, then it was all about the deal with Iran, remember? with John Kerry as the czar. Whatever happened to that?
Well, the Iranians said, we'll only talk to you if Putin is our interlocutor. And, you know, Putin said, no deal. And eventually, so it ended up not going anywhere, but they're still trying. They're still trying.
Yeah,
They,
and
because they believe that their ideology compels them to do these things. And that's it. That's the only thought that
that's
goes.
it. Is everything is uh, uh, let's say this is something that comes from the French sociologues of the 60s,
Mhm.
that one has to pick an ideology and everything in one's life has to be subservient to that ideology, and everything you do has to be for the benefit of that ideology as a means of gaining transcendence. It's all bullshit, uh, probably too much bad wine, but this is how these people act. And they don't even think, I don't think they have the capacity for thinking anymore.
No, I mean, there's okay, Bill Maher. Bill Maher is an ideologue. He's not. I mean, he makes noises about being anti woke and all that. But in the end, he's an ideologue. But it's not based on anything factual. He's incapable of actual critical thinking because his ideology tells him. It's like the short story by Kurt Vonnegut called Harrison Bergeron, where um, in the society of the futures, everybody's equal. So intelligent people have to wear this special cap that periodically gives them electric shocks to disrupt their thoughts. And
Right.
at this point in his life, Bill Maher is now those little neural passageways have they closed down, and then they got scar tissue over them. So Bill Maher will never change. He'll go down with the ship. And you know, he routinely says life in California is
Even when he states, even when he states the idiocies of the left, he's unable to put two and two together.
yeah, yeah. He makes excuses. He claims that Obama was one of our best presidents. He has no complaints whatsoever with him. And this is just a man who's incapable of thinking. And it's because he's got that little cap on that shocks his brain. If he gets too close to that red line, it's like, oh, you may be criticizing
Hmm.
us. So
Yeah. Uh, None of them. James Carvin, uh, who did it in the, somebody mentioned him in the chat. So I can't see it now, but whoever it was, thank you. James Carvin is not saying that Obama is the best president we ever had. Now, J- James Carville, the raging Cajun, one of the biggest imbeciles ever to soil American politics. He is the one credited with the campaign slogan for Clinton, "It's the economy, stupid," which, according to him and a lot of idiot pundits like him, uh, is what won Clinton the election.
no,
No, assholes. Clinton got 40% of the vote. 60% of the people wanted a conservative.
yeah, it was Ross Perot who won Clinton the vote twice.
Right. Because it was 40% Bush, 20% Perot, 40% Clinton. Clinton didn't win the election. He fucking lost it.
Yeah,
The only reason he entered the White House is because the opposition was split, courtesy of Perot. And with the split opposition, he managed to get into the White House with 40% of the fucking vote.
and see again, that's the fault of the voters. I mean, everything
Yeah.
that's happening.
But the point is, Carville takes credit for that triumph.
Right,
Bullshit, moron.
right. And okay, Carville and his ilk now are they're reduced to just childishly lying,
Yeah,
and clearly they have no strategy to stop Trump. Okay, you and I were talking last night. Whatever happened to Jack Smith? Nobody talks about it anymore. The Jack Smith case, and that's because it's dead. It's dead in the water. It's not going anywhere. Jack
yeah.
Smith.
Alvin Bragg, they started talking on today, and it's not more alive either.
Say it again.
Uh, Today, I saw the first bit of news about Alvin Bragg. Remember Alvin Bragg?
Yeah,
He used to be on the news every day. His lawsuit against Trump and all the jazz, and suddenly
yeah.
crickets. And
No,
now they're talking about him again because they're trying to revive that piece of shit. But they're dead in the water.
none
And
of
by the way, Engoron, that fucking hepoid in New York, it's going to have a very bad surprise because Trump is going to make the bond and is going to appeal. And if
yeah.
he has to put 500 million in collateral for the bond, he will.
This is the thing that okay, you and I agreed Trump was always going to have the money for the bond, and he made political hay out of it, which we agree he should have. It was effective. It worked, and
It worked.
you when your enemy makes a really stupid move, you exploit it. You don't like help the enemy out. You
No.
you mercilessly exploit it.
No.
And
If Trump had come out and said, oh, well, no fucking problem, I'll just put the cash, he would have gotten no sympathy. And on the contrary, a lot of people would have been pissed off. But
oh yeah,
he starts. I don't know if I can get the cash. I have properties and shares. It's not easy to get liquidity. By the way, it is too fucking easy. You don't have to share to sell the shares. You can get a margin loan on the shares. No big deal.
yeah.
And
And
banks would fight over for the opportunity of making that loan to Trump.
well, this is the thing that everything they had planned for Trump was stupid. It was doomed to failure. And if you refuse to recognize the real problem, then you won't come up with a viable solution. And the real problem with Trump is Joe Biden. It's the Democrats. It's their policies. But they are absolutely wedded to their policies right to the bitter end. And 2020 is it may as well be 1820 by now. It doesn't matter anymore. I saw a program today, and they were talking about the lockdowns for the pandemic, and the guy was saying, "What year was that? When did all that start?" And they were like, "Was it 2022?" And then finally they remembered, "Oh, it was 2020." Nobody cares. A few Californians, you still see them wandering around with their masks on, but it's over. It's there's a few fringe conservatives who talk about that. It was a dry run for implanting chips in us or whatever. No, it was what it was. There was something that they exaggerated, and it was all about control, but it was no experiment. It was all about the moment. They were exerting control in the moment, and what they didn't understand was that this was a one-time deal for the American public. They're never going to do that again. They're never going to shut down the economy again. They're never going to accept
No.
taking their kids out of school again.
Yeah, no, and the Dutch are never going to overbeat the tulips.
Yeah.
You see, what happened here was like the tulip craze. Everybody left their senses in the bathroom at the same time and followed this shit with religious fervor. You and I, from the very beginning, pointing to the general imbecility of this. Uh, I was hoping that by June of 2020, uh, it would be over. It took another year. The suffering, people are still paying for this folly. People are still paying, literally.
It's not.
Much of the inflation that we've had is a consequence of the destruction of supply lines.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, and we're
yeah,
still
it's
paying for that. We're still paying for that. I mean, you know,
yes, and we will, and our kids will be. We discussed this as it was being proposed in March, not March, April, and May of 2020, of the damage to kids by isolating them for prolonged periods. Uh, as a society, we did it, and we have problems in stunted intellectual development. Kids that are behind to act as adults. It's not like you go back to school and you pick up where you left. They have to relearn how to live, and they are behind. The,
well, it's
the anxiety, uh, sertraline prescriptions went up 3,000%.
yeah, and okay, my psychiatrist, he's never opened up his office again. It's now 100% teleconferences, and he's a perfect Southern Californian doctor, and I knew that things were no. I mean, I knew from the beginning that things were. This was just another case of the flu. Um, all the stories of the refrigerator trucks, and there was a fake story about the mass grave in New York. That was a potter's field. That was where they buried people whose bodies nobody wanted, and they accumulate them, and then they bury them in rows in it's called Potter's Field. It's where the homeless are buried. It's where elderly with no relatives and no names or no ability to pay for a funeral are buried, and it's that was hyped up by both the right and the left. And when these emergency
Uh-oh.
hospital ships arrived on both coasts and they were never even used, that was a disgrace. Um,
Yes.
these
How
lying
about the Javits Center in New York?
exactly. Or we had an emergency
4,000 beds.
hospital built out here that was never used. And everybody used that. Everybody exploited that. The teachers union in California, they got extra money and extra time off so they could just put on more blubber, and kids had to try and get through home remote schooling for 2 years, and I don't know. It's Dr.
Yeah,
Phil of
and
all.
by the way, Weingarten is now saying that she never promoted school closings. Oh no, really?
No, these people are all just disgusting. And Dr. Phil was pointing out that basically for 2 years people had no medical and no psychiatric attention. Your father's condition was not
No.
checked for 2 years, and
Hey,
as a result,
we spoke. No, we spoke of this. Yeah, you and I spoke of this before.
yeah,
Before it happened,
yeah, no,
and now everybody's a genius. My father would have been sick. Uh, he would have eventually died of the same illness, uh, but he would have probably spent a couple more years enjoying this green earth. Uh, but for the fact that for 2 years he couldn't get a doctor's appointment, so by the time he was diagnosed, there was little that anybody could do.
Yeah. No, and here in California, in Los Angeles County, no, it was the state government. We had somebody with no medical training whatsoever making all the decisions, and she was a gay woman of color, so we can't say
Oh
anything.
well,
And
I bet you she was eminently capable.
well, see, look at all these women who are in charge of all these Trump cases. They're all flops. The one in Georgia, I mean, she bilks the taxpayers out of $1 million so she can big time it with her lover, and it's so cheap. The notion that what these people think is the big time. It's just so cheap, and
It's
I don't
so
know,
tawdry.
tawdry. It's
I mean,
extremely.
yeah, it's tawdry. Number one, I think the man deserves twice whatever money he got, because screwing this hag, it's not easy. It requires overcoming the impulse to vomit. But think about that. These are chicken thieves.
Yeah,
This is an unprincipled woman who steals loose change to go hamp his gigolo at a motel someplace in the Bahamas. Imagine that. I mean,
yeah.
it's not like she went, because, stealing to go on vacation is so, gosh.
Well, it's
We're not talking about $1,700 nights in Switzerland.
no,
We're,
no,
we're talking about $200 a night hotel in the Bahamas.
and it makes her no different from like these Nigerian theft rings or something like that. I mean, it's just
No.
it's ridiculous. I mean, everybody should be mortified about the state of Georgia, but see, they're not, because another problem with the ideology of the left is that anybody who's not a white male has the standards dropped through the floor for their behavior, their capability. I mean, think about it. You have this fake Harvard president who's not real. She just looks the part, and
Yeah, Claudine Gay.
she has to resign, and then they defiantly give her a position with even more money, and it's like, you should be embarrassed. It's like, you have this. There was a show. The Wayans family was like a comedic dynasty. They had
Yes.
multiple brothers and a sister, and they had this recurring spot on their comedy show where it was two black men speaking to each other, and they were faux intellectuals, and they were just making up words, and back then we could laugh at stuff like that because we all understood what the gag was. And
Hold on.
now,
What was it? The Wyans brothers who did the white chicks thing, where they pretended to be white blondes?
exactly, speaking with
Yeah.
valley accents, they were in whiteface, and they wore blonde wigs, and it was two young men who were passing as white.
Yeah.
Well, Eddie Murphy did a sketch on.
Of course. Yes.
He was white, and
And Jewish. He
He
was white and Jewish.
he went to a bank for a loan, and they just took out this stack of cash. And the guy said, "What are you waiting for? Take it. Come on, take it." Because he was white. They were both white, and this is what white people got for being white. And it was funny. Everybody laughed because it was so outrageous, but there was no venom in it. I mean, it was so the top. Eddie Murphy didn't.
By the way, give me 1 second. Good night, you boob. This is as far as we go with you. See you next week, maybe. I don't know. And off we are. You can always come to Odyssey to continue watching. The link is